welcome back to episode 79 of In the Shadow of the Evening Trees. I'm Jen Von Ebers.
I'm Dave Von Ebers. Welcome.
Welcome. We're happy you're back.
Welcome. We're happy we're back. We're happy we're still around, frankly.
We hope you guys are having
Can't take anything for granted these days.
That's true. We hope you guys are having a good day. Today is April 12th, 2025. If you're listening to this in the future. And we were talking earlier that we are wearing t-shirts that are record or artist, musician related.
Without really thinking about it.
Without even realizing it.
Well, I knew that I saw earlier that it was record store. It's record store day.
It's record store day, and I am wearing a t-shirt that is Valhalla Records. If you're watching this on video, I'm showing my t-shirt. If you're listening to it, it is I would say, kind of famous record store that's still in existence.
It's a record store that's been around since late 60s,
yes,
early 70s.
In our hometown of Oak Park, Illinois. So, and I got this t-shirt on record store day.
And I'm wearing my, I was going to say we have a guest in the studio, Garland Jeffries, because I made that dumb joke about when I was wearing a Bruce Springsteen t-shirt. I said we had a guest and it was Bruce Springsteen. But I'm wearing a Garland Jeffries t-shirt. If you don't know who Garland Jeffries is, he's a fantastic singer-songwriter from New York, who we've talked about many times. We saw him in concert many times.
We're friends in real life.
We're friends in real life. He's since retired. There's also a really cool documentary about him called The King of In Between. So if you get a chance to see that, see that. That has nothing to do with what we're really going to talk about.
It does not, but we just happen to be wearing unrelated.
But it's all inspired by Record Store Day.
It is. And I had no idea, so that was just a coincidence.
And here comes Gordy, right on cue, our cat, Gordy crying. My cup, by the way, says, World's Best Cat Dad.
Yes.
And I know, some guys are weird about cats.
Ever.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Best ever. I misspoke. Some guys are weird about cats. They think it's not manly for a guy to like cats. There was even a joke on Seinfeld. But I don't care.
It's true.
Because I'm a cat person and...
You are a good cat dad.
I'm not going to apologize.
So we wanted to first start this episode by just reminding people that we are doing fundraising for Lambda Legal, and there's an upcoming event on May 9th, 2025 in Chicago at the Art Institute. It's a gala.
It's a gala.
And
the Bond Foster Civil Rights Celebration, which is an annual event in Chicago.
And we are part of the host committee, so we are working with a group of people who are also fundraising, and every little bit helps.
Yes.
$5,
yes,
$10. We know that times are tough.
$1 million if you have it handy.
That would be great.
Somebody's won one of these big lottery prizes recently.
Not us.
Not us. Not us, because we might be doing a podcast, but we'd have much nicer.
There would be signs.
There would be signs, as the internet meme goes.
There'd be an ocean behind us.
But if you're out there and that's exactly right. Yes, there would be.
Instead of this beautiful wall.
This lovely coral-colored wall. So it's kind of a theme.
It is.
But yeah, someone out there won a big lottery prize recently. So come on, man, dig into your pockets.
Yeah,
give
if
till
you know
it hurts.
them, just let them know.
Yeah. But we have a fundraising page, which we'll put the link to.
And there's also, if you want to attend the event, there's also tickets available for it as well. So you can, we would see you there if you
could join us.
If you could join us.
We would have a lovely time.
And last year when we went, we've had such cold weather. Last year when we went, it was beautiful out, and even in the evening. And if you've never been to the Art Institute, we were in the wing. The West Wing. It's not the West Wing, but
no, that's the White House you're thinking.
Yeah.
We haven't been to the White House. Barack Obama did not invite us to the White House, which is
it was in a wing,
shame.
a newer wing of the Art Institute that's really fancy. The whole place is fancy. But they had a beautiful outdoor garden, almost like an indoor courtyard thing with beautiful music. We walked up to random people, introduced ourselves. So it was quite the night.
Jennifer walked up to random people and introduced us.
Yeah, I did.
And we had some friends who were there too.
Yes, so we had friends that were there too. So it is a very nice evening, and just very uplifting to everybody in the community that there are people doing great things.
And Lambda Legal, just as an aside, is one of the oldest, maybe the oldest LGBTQ plus rights, legal advocacy, and civil rights organizations in the country. They were formed over 50 years ago in New York State. they actually had to sue the state of New York to recognize them as a charity because the state of New York said that it was not a charitable purpose to defend the rights of LGBTQ plus people and people
False.
living with AIDS. False. Although in 1973 they were not yet aware of the AIDS crisis, of course. That came later. But in any event, I've gone down a digression, gone down a rabbit hole.
And you actually got to meet the CEO of
I
Lambda
did.
Legal
I
yesterday.
did.
Just yesterday.
Just yesterday, Kevin Jennings, the CEO of Lambda Legal, was in Chicago to give a talk. And there was also, I don't know if I had mentioned this, there was also a lawyer from the Chicago office who talked about some litigation they're handling in the state of Iowa, right next door to us. But one of the things that jumped out at me, because we've talked about, I mentioned the fact that, 80 years ago, my father was fighting the Nazis in Europe. And Kevin Jennings is around the same age as I am. And he was talking about how if you're in that age group and you have parents who were, grew up in the Great Depression and fought World War II and so forth, everybody always wants to know of people your parents' age, what did you do during the war? And because you want to think that, you hope that your parents were helping to literally save democracy, and he was saying, and I don't think it's an exaggeration, is that, this is our what did you do during the war moment, because the rule of law is under attack here in the United States. Marginalized people, including LGBTQ plus people, are under constant attack.
Constant.
But it's even more than that. And Lambda Legal is one of the legal organizations that's standing up and fighting back. They're fighting back for the community, but they're also working with other organizations like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, fighting the president's attack on DEI initiatives. They're working with the ACLU on different cases. So this is extremely important work, and it's probably never been more important. Because, you think of we made a lot of progress over the years from 1973 when Lambda started through, marriage equality and things like that in the 2000s. But all of those gains are under attack right now. And along with other attacks on the rule of law, every day we're asking, if the courts ordered Trump to do something or not to do something, will he even follow court orders? I mean, it's literally an attack on the rule of law on a day-to-day basis. So, it's not an exaggeration to say this is our what did you do during the war kind of moment, and we want to be able to answer that.
Well, and you mentioned something, it's the progress of, steps forward, and then you think in 2025, the steps of progress would still keep going forward and everything, but to be going forward and then take many steps back and many more steps back, and people who think they're safe and secure with what rights they have and everything, but then you don't even know waking up the next day, what are you gonna run into, or how are you, what's gonna happen. And so that kind of insecurity about what's gonna happen, Lambda has actually done tremendous strides with winning cases. And just defending so many people. So they're really at the big fight, and they're on top of everything that's going on. And so we are more than happy to be part of this organization to just see what we can do in a little tiny way. But it's many people that make things happen. So not just us, but so many other people.
Right. And you talk about the work they've done. During the first Trump administration, they filed 14 lawsuits. They prevailed in 12 out of 14 lawsuits. They filed several lawsuits, I think 4 in total right now, but with more sort of in the pipeline, directly against the Trump administration. They have litigation all over the country attacking other laws, but at least 4 lawsuits against the Trump administration, and they've already been very successful in 2 of them. 2 out of the 4 they've gotten preliminary injunctions, halting the ban on transgender service members, and I can't remember what the other one is. I'm blanking out.
Okay.
They just told us about it, but we'll put that in our
show notes.
in our show notes. But and the other two are it's not that they lost the other two. The other two are still working their way through. But they've had remarkable success, and so it's well worth supporting them. And they're working. They're not doing it on their own. They're working with other great organizations.
Absolutely.
They get help from big name law firms around the country, including Jenner & Block, which was where I started my legal career many years ago.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but their whole time that Lambda has been around has just been through donations, correct?
Almost exclusively. That's they do not get grants from the government. They don't get they get some corporate money and sponsors and so forth. A lot of law firms make significant donations and so forth.
That's tremendous.
But it's still all private donations.
Right,
It's
and that's
all
the thing
private
that
donations.
is so impressive is that you can have a charity that is funded by that for decades and decades and decades. So, and it's through things like this and galas like this where they can continue to fight the fight, because obviously, as we all know, it is not cheap to fight legal battles and everything, and having top attorneys and continuations and things that last a long time, and also just super smart people who are just very dedicated to this cause.
Right. And one thing in that, we talk about the significance of the fundraising efforts. This is the premier event and the major fundraising event for the Midwest region, which is headquartered in Chicago. It's important to know too, Lambda's been around for 52 years. The Chicago office has been around for around 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a huge part of this. And they have offices in other parts of the country too. But the Chicago office is a huge part of this, which is one of the reasons why Kevin came here to talk to supporters on Friday. And I just want to add one last personal note. We've talked about this before, but the person who actually endowed the Chicago office was a colleague and friend of mine who I started my legal career with, the guy named Bon Foster, who's
the name of the gala,
the namesake of the gala. He and I both started out at Jenner & Block back in the mid '80s, and he sadly passed away very young. But he left the money to establish the Lambda Legal office in Chicago, and so that's all the more reason why it's kind of personal to me. Is that I remember hanging out with Bon, and our offices were next to each other and chatting and all that sort of thing. And I remember also, unfortunately, when he passed away, and so. It means a lot that he was able to start this office in Chicago.
And if he obviously knew the legacy that he created how long it's lasted, I mean, it's just tremendous that one person can have that big of an impact on Lambda and getting it started in Chicago. So that's amazing. So we're really looking forward to going back downtown to the gala, and it's just very uplifting and just hopeful, I guess you could say.
It absolutely is. And I think you mentioned it, but we'll put a link to our fundraising page. We'll also put a link into the link where you can buy tickets.
Yes.
The site where you can buy tickets. So if you're interested and you're in Chicago, give some
and you want to
thought
hang out
to
with us for a little bit.
You want to hang out with us. You want to chill, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Do the kids still say that?
They might say that.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But we're going to chill.
But one of the reasons why we wanted to talk tonight specifically about being parents of a trans child. We have an adult child, but it's one of the things that we've seen.
I'm an adult child, but we have a child who happens to be an adult who's also transgender.
Yes. But we've seen over the years many times online, and doesn't matter whether somebody's trans or gay or binary, non-binary, where you share that news with your family, your parents, and everything like that, and you're immediately turned away, shut down, kicked out of your family, not welcome, and things like that. So for us, that breaks our heart because we think that, obviously as a parent, you don't know what your child's going to be like when they grow up, how they're when they're small or anything. But no matter what path they take, whether it's a place they want to live that you don't necessarily agree with, or if they want to take a trade that you think they should go to college, any kind of thing that should happen in their life, our belief is that you support them 100%.
Yeah.
You can obviously give your opinion, and if you have something that you want to say about that, but then never turn them away and kick them out of your family just because of their certain orientation or anything like that.
Yeah, and what got me thinking about it was not just the event on Friday, but even before that, I saw a post on Threads, I think it was, which is kind of like the companion to Instagram,
Yes.
Pardon me. Where I have a frog in my throat, an actual frog. We had frog legs for dinner. We did not. But I saw a post, this isn't funny at all, by a young woman who said that she had come out as transgender to her family or to her mother at age 14 and just was disowned and treated very, very badly. And, I kind of, when something like this comes up, I kind of go back and forth a little bit about, should I mention the name and the account or whatever, or does that person not necessarily want unsolicited attention?
Right.
And I in this instance, kind of err on the side of I'm not going to mention the person's name or account not because I find it to be controversial or something like that, but because I think that's their story, their individual story, and it's not for me to tell that person's story. I did respond with encouragement, and I said, we have a trans daughter, we're very proud of her. But the point is not to try to put a spotlight on this one individual person so much, or as I say, to try to tell that person's story, but just I feel like there's a bigger thing going on here where some people kind of don't know how to be parents. Like they don't understand what they signed up for. And I, God knows, have never been even remotely perfect as a parent. My kids would roll their eyes just hearing me talk about it. And they'd be right to roll their eyes hearing me talk about it. You've been a very good parent, without question. I have not always been that great, but I feel like I at least understood the assignment, as the kids say on the internet. Now that I know they say.
And I think it does speak volumes though, because when our daughter came out to us when she was 22, she never had the worry about telling us of like, oh my gosh, I think I can never say this to my family because they're not going to accept this and I won't be able to live the life. So I may as well not even try, kind of thing. So in that capacity, I think we are good parents because...
Well, no, you are very good. I didn't mean to suggest we weren't. I know I can do better. But yeah, I mean, I do think that's right. But, it's like a big part of the job is accepting your kids. And we've talked before about, you don't understand everything. You don't know what another person's going through. We don't have all the answers. It's okay to be a little confused and not quite understand it, but it's never okay to reject your kid. It's just never okay. Like, that's what you signed up for. It reminds me of conversations we've had before about the gender reveals, and it's something that you've kind of expressed some irritation with. For that exact reason is, you make a lot of assumptions about who your children are from the moment.
But you don't know.
But you don't know what lies ahead. And my feeling has always been, it's not that a person, and we've said this before, so I know I'm repeating myself, but it's not that a person transitions from one thing to another. They always were that person. Sometimes it takes them a while to figure it out.
For sure.
And then they share it with you. And you're not a bad person because it's simply because you didn't realize that your kid was transgender, because your kid didn't realize they were until a certain point in their life. Right? But when they do realize that, and then they come to you and they say, guess what? This is who I am. Number one, they're not changing. They're who they always were. They just understand a little bit more about themselves. Number two, it doesn't matter whether you understand or not.
Right.
I mean, it matters because you should be understanding. But what I'm saying is that that's not the moment for you to say, oh my goodness, it's all about me. I don't understand. I'm confused. I'm hurt or whatever. It's always about your child. They are who they are, and it's not, you can't always, to use the popular phrase, you can't always center yourself in that.
Right.
So, I feel like there's a lot of parents who kind of feel like, they're like, they sort of like, they feel like they own their child, right? That their child is their property. And when it comes to things like gender, and also when it comes to things like whether or not your kid's going to go to college or what kind of job they don't just feel like they own their child. They feel like their child has to be...
do what they say.
Right, and be a mini version of them. Like, if I'm a dad, my child has to be just like, if I have boys, they have to be just like me. Or if you're a mom and you have girls. And, that's not what the thing is. I think, like my parents were actually pretty cool with the idea, at least from, I'm the youngest, so they made the mistakes on the other kids. No, I'm kidding. They were actually
and David's the youngest of 11, so they had a lot of practice.
Yeah, they had a lot of practice, and they finally got it right. But
and then we're done.
No, I'm kidding, because my siblings are great. But at least in my experience, my parents had no problem whatsoever with me growing up, moving out of the house, getting on with my life. Like, they never were like, oh, trying to hold on and pull me back or whatever. And I just think that's like a fundamental part of it. Your job is to kind of set them up. Their job is to go live their lives, and you support that process.
Right.
I don't think it's that complicated. That's the thing. It's like, I don't understand. They aren't, even from birth, they're not your property. You don't own them. We don't even talk about owning cats and dogs anymore. People say, "Oh, I'm a dog mom," or "I'm a cat dad," or whatever. Like, we don't even talk about, the law says they're your property, but we don't think of it that way because we think of our cats and dogs as family members. You don't own your children, and you can't. And that's like I think it's like the worst way in the world to think you're just trying to create a miniature version of yourself.
And you did remind me of something when you said that you posted something supportive to that person. I've definitely done the same thing many times. If I've seen it on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, if somebody has been in that situation where they're alone, forgotten, no parents or anything like that, and it is nice to support that person and just like, there's nothing wrong with you, or and then I'd be like, my daughter's a trans daughter, and you are amazing and you're worth everything, kind of thing. And when you see more parents of that, and especially we've seen it too, where if you go to like the gay pride parade, and it'll parents will have like a free hug from a mom, a free hug from a dad, and that is like, I want to do that, but then I'd cry too much.
You would cry too much.
And then I'd be like, we've adopted all these people, these adult people.
Yeah. But they got to pay for their own groceries.
They do.
There's only so much we can do.
There's only so much we can do.
And it's funny too, because a lot of the adults out there, whether or not they have LGBTQ plus children of their own or not, a lot of the ones who oppose transgender rights and who oppose the schools accommodating LGBTQ plus kids and stuff, a lot of those adults frame it as parents' rights. We're defending parents' rights. And I'm like, I'm a parent. You're trying to trample my rights as a parent of an LGBTQ plus child. Now, again, as you mentioned, our daughter came out as an adult, but she certainly could have come out at an earlier age. I mean, again, it's a journey. It takes a while to figure out who you are. I can attest to that. And, but you're trying to interfere. You say, oh, I want to protect my child from some influence. I don't quite understand that, but that seems to be the underlying premise. I'm just trying to protect my kids from the existence of other kids. I don't get what you're trying to protect your child from. But in any event, what you're really doing is you're trying to interfere with the rights of supportive parents who are doing what they're supposed to do as parents.
And
supporting their kids and wanting to make sure that their kids have a welcoming environment in school, that they're safe in school, that they're not bullied in school. They want to make sure that if the kid is maybe trans or non-binary, they're getting good, solid medical advice and helping their kids through the medical aspects of this, making sure their kids have health care. You're really interfering with parents' rights, but you couch it as parents' rights because it makes you feel like they have this kind of weird sort of hero thing going on in their head. Like they imagine that they're fighting the Crusades or something like that. And they have to couch it that way because it's really just, I think it's really just bigotry and prejudice, but they can't admit that to themselves. So they create this fantasy in their head where they're fighting for quote unquote parents' rights. And it's like, but you're not. You're trying to take the rights away from people. What happened in Missouri? They were all talking about parents' rights in Missouri. Missouri passed a law that said if you're a parent, you can't get gender-affirming care for your kids. Missouri, the state of Missouri, is interfering with parents trying to get medical care for their children. Tennessee is doing the same thing. We talked about the Scarametti case in the Supreme Court back in December that Lambda Legal was a part of. The state of Tennessee is trying to dictate to parents in Tennessee the kind of health care decisions they can make for their child. You're not defending parents' rights, you're attacking parents' rights.
And we said this before, for the community is very tiny. So, I mean, to have so much of a spotlight put on, and the people who say things that are unfounded and things like that, or just have anything. I always want to say, have you ever met somebody who's trans? No. Yeah. You probably have not exactly, at all have had any interaction with anybody. Or you have and you didn't even know it, kind of thing.
Right.
So
absolutely.
So that's the other thing. It's like you could be working with somebody who's transgender and not even know it, and that's okay. They can live their life however they want. But it's just one of those things that it's just like it hurts our hearts when so many people are being, and we've talked about it with our daughter and her partner who's also transgender. It's like we feel like we feel responsible for their well-being all the time, even though they're adults, because they obviously read the news, they talk to their friends, they see stuff online, they see the hatred, they see all the condescending comments and things like that, and it's just heartbreaking to have them live in a world where that's what's happening now. And like I said just a little bit ago, you feel like you're making progress, and then next thing you know, it's just like all these things are being ripped away. Right. For people who had a passport that had an X on it because they're transgender
that was for non-binary.
For non-binary, sorry. And to have an administration say, nope, can't have that anymore, kind of thing. Yeah. And it's just insane.
Yeah, right. And and again, I mean, you mentioned our daughter's partner, her family is very supportive. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, that was wrong. I misspoke. Their family is very supportive. Apologies for making that mistake. And by the way, that's another thing. You're going to make mistakes as a parent. If your child is trans or non-binary, you're not always going to get it right. You're going to make mistakes because it's kind of human nature. Our brains are kind of not that great. We make mistakes and we forget, or we get in the habit of saying something, and so sometimes you do use wrong pronouns and that sort of thing, as I just did there. And if it's intentional, if you're doing it on purpose, and you're doing it, then you're a jerk. Okay. Mm-hmm. If it's a mistake, though, you gotta. I mean, it's not necessarily your fault, but you got to do better, and I have to do better. Right? That was a good example of it. But you got to own it. You got to own it, and you got to say, "I'm sorry," whatever. And what you find is that trans and non-binary people are usually pretty accepting of the fact that we make mistakes, as long as it's not all the time. Right. As long as it's not really a callous or careless sort of thing. If you slip up, I feel bad if I do it, but it's going to happen. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But if you own it and you recognize it, and then you work harder to not make that dumb mistake again, you can go a long way towards not causing injury by making those mistakes. For sure.
For sure. And as I've mentioned before, the whole gender reveal, I just saw another one today that was just so over the top of, just having so much fanfare and so much, a plane flying over with red, pink, smoke coming out, or blue smoke, and just like so over the top, and the reactions of, whether it's a boy or a girl and things like that. And the way I look at it, and I've always looked at it, and yes, we did find out the gender of our kids before they were born, just for curiosity, and then to see like, kind of thing, naming, and things like that. But then that's all it should be, kind of thing. And having it like, and my whole thing is like, when somebody says, oh, I'm a boy mom, if they have all boys and everything, and that's just their whole personality, and they like have this whole idea set in their head of like what a boy or what a young man, what a man should be, and then it turns out to be different, then that child just feels like, maybe I don't want to hurt my mom, kind of thing, because she just like, this is how she wants me to be, so I guess I will have to be this, instead of just saying to your kids, who you are is who you are. It doesn't matter. We will always accept you no matter what.
And that's the crazy thing about all this, is that I think a lot of this stuff, the gender reveals and the stuff with the the girl dad and all this stuff, I think so much of it is just parents making themselves the center of everything. And if you have a daughter and you're proud of your daughter, but you have to inject that you're their dad all the time, or you're their mom all the time, or vice versa, I think you're really just making it about yourself instead of the girl or the boy, the son or the daughter, or the non-binary child or the trans child, or whatever. There's nothing wrong with saying, if you're a woman and you're proud of the fact that you're a woman, nothing wrong with that. But don't make yourself the center of your kid's life.
Right.
And that's you're talking about, you're building up these expectations where you have to be this way. You have to play football, or you have to do whatever.
You can't paint your nails. You can't wear makeup,
right. And it's just amazing how like really gendered people are. And I got to tell you something. It's true with a lot of young people too. I'm not trying to make broad generalizations about, younger generations, but there are a lot of young people who still are like, well, I need a girlfriend because she has to cook for me or clean for me or whatever. Or, there's a lot of young women are like, well, I'm just going to have babies and stay home and clean the house. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with staying at home with kids. That's work. That's real work.
Oh, hell yeah.
Right?
It is not easy.
But to believe that that's your role and you must do that, and that's, I'm so tired of this like really rigid concepts of gender.
We actually just saw an episode of a 90 Day Fiancé, which I've told you is our
No, you saw it. I just happened to be sitting on the couch. You watched it.
But they had it where the son lives at home with his mother and has his mid-30s, living still, never moved out, lived at home. And then he has a fiance from another country who came over. And immediately the mom said, I'm glad you're in the picture now, because his bedroom, his bedroom is filthy, needs to be cleaned up, and hopefully you can. And she was just like, I did not come from another country to clean up your son's bedroom. No, ma'am.
That was pretty cringy. That was pretty cringy, especially because she's way out of that guy's league. But we'll talk about that another time.
Exactly.
But she is way out of that guy's league.
Huge mistake.
And that is, the whole thing with people's concept of parenting is really bizarre to me these days. It goes from one extreme to the other. It's like, on the one hand, some of these kind of like really rigid, traditional gender type mindset people are trying to dictate everybody else's life. They're trying to interfere with every other family and tell other parents,
you should live like we do.
You have to live like we do. But then at the same time, and again, it goes back, I think, to this idea of ownership. It's like they also, they don't want to do anything that might be, they see everything as a threat to their own parental rights. Like, for example, when it comes to vaccinations, getting their kids vaccinated, or the interaction between their children and their teachers and stuff like that. They want to have like the veto power over everything. And again, it's sort of like this sense of ownership. And I remember when our kids were little and we had to have them, vaccinated so they go to school. I mean, granted, it is a little bit weird that the school district is telling you your kids have to have these shots. You do kind of think like, well, this is kind of weird or whatever. But you overcome that pretty quickly because for a couple of things. Number one, you realize, well, it's not just for your own kid. I mean, obviously you don't want your own kids to get sick. You don't want your kids to get measles. But you also know that the whole point of vaccination programs is that they protect vulnerable people who can't get the vaccine, people who have, immune system issues where they can't get the vaccine. If every other kid has the vaccine and the one kid with who's immunocompromised or whatever can't get it, then that child is protected because the other kids aren't likely to get measles or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's a way of protecting more vulnerable people. And so as a parent, you should also want other kids to be safe. So that's a big part of it. But the other thing is, we kind of exaggerate what parental rights means. I mean, it doesn't mean you could literally do anything to your own child and there are no limits. And I think a lot of parents are starting to think that way. Well, I can put my kid at risk to get measles because the government can't tell me that I can't.
Right.
Well, yeah, actually the government can, and they've been doing it for generations now. But also it's like, I've seen posts on social media where people freak out because if you have a younger child, when they reach a certain age, the family doctor may ask you to leave the examination room so they can talk to the kid alone. And a lot of parents kind of get freaked out by that. And again, it's the kind of thing as a parent, when that happens to you, it is a little uncomfortable. Like you don't really know how to react. But they do that, of course, because in those very, very rare instances where a child is being abused, I don't know if they're really that rare, to be honest with you, but if a parent is abusing a child, that's the only way that's going to come to light.
Right.
Right? I mean, it could, in theory, if a teacher sees signs of abuse on a child or whatever, or another parent in the neighborhood or whatever. But that's one way in which you can detect child abuse. And you have to recognize as a parent that your rights are not so unlimited that you could actually abuse your own kid and no one could ever question or find out about it or hold you accountable for it. And I get that it's a weird moment when it first happens with your child and the doctor says, okay, I would like you to go outside so that I can talk to your son or daughter. But they do that because they don't know what goes on in your home. And that's the thing. You want to protect children? Well, guess what? Doctors are mandatory reporters. Teachers are mandatory reporters. Coaches are mandatory reporters. If they learn somehow or another that a child has faced some sort of abuse, they have an obligation to report that to the police. There are anonymous tip lines where state workers can call in and things like that. I've known people, all my life who were in jobs like that where they were mandatory reporters. So your rights as a parent are not unlimited. And there are times, and it's weird, and it can be uncomfortable, but when you send your kid off to school or when you're going to the doctor, there are these situations where you have to place some trust in other adults, and you have to say, at a certain point, those other adults have some control over your kid and and it is awkward and uncomfortable, but you ought to care enough about your kid that it's another example of how your job is to support your kids and to provide the best possible life for them and the safest life and so on and so forth. And so part of that is ceding a little bit of control here and there. Going out of the doctor's office, or the exam room in that situation, letting the teachers talk about things in the classroom that maybe you're not 100% comfortable with, but in reality, it's more important that they talk about them than not.
For sure.
And that's part of it. If you believe that what your job is to do the best for your kids, sometimes that means giving up a little bit of control in certain situations. I just think.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned about the vaccines because I was just thinking that for the parents who think that they shouldn't have their kids vaccinated, like when that child gets older, and if they have complications or ailments or get sick more often because of that, it wasn't their fault that that they didn't have the opportunity, and that's just another responsibility of that's why we do it.
Right, and there's a lot of examples, people a little bit older like us, a lot of examples where we had all the vaccines that were available when we were younger, but it turns out that we need to get revaccinated for certain things because the vaccines we had as kids at a certain point are no longer effective. The shingles vaccine is the one that
I'm doing that soon.
I've already done that, and that's a big deal.
Because I do not want to get shingles.
Yeah, especially not as an adult. I mean, that's one thing that's much worse. But again, that's right. I mean, you're making decisions. It's not just that it puts other kids in the area at risk, and it's not even necessarily that it just puts your own child at risk temporarily. They could face issues. They could be exposed to where the measles are making a comeback, right?
Right.
So if someone in my age had never gotten those vaccines when we were little, now you could be exposed to it as an adult because reckless, careless parents aren't getting their children vaccinated. You just, it's complicated and it can be confusing. And there's times when you want to have more control than you really have. And there's times when maybe you're exercising too much control over your kids.
Right.
But the job always is the kids come first, right? If you're not willing to accept that, you shouldn't have kids. The kids come first. They are who they are. Your job is to support them and love them unconditionally. Yeah, unconditionally means unconditionally. And sometimes being a parent and wanting the best for your kid means stepping back and letting some other adults teach your kids, coach your kids, provide health care to your kids.
Give advice.
Give advice. Sometimes the other adults might see things a little more clearly than you. And it might be scary for you, or it might be upsetting because you feel like you're not in control. But if you're the kind of parent who might reject a gay child or a trans child or a non-binary child, and a teacher or a doctor or a principal at a school gives them support, that might be keeping that kid alive for a period of time. And then when you eventually come around, they protected your child when you were vulnerable and couldn't protect your child. And you should be grateful for that, not mad about your parents' rights. That's my thing.
True. That is true. That's good. So we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we appreciate being able to talk to you about this because it's very important to us. And if you have any questions, as we always say, sometimes you can't talk to people around you, or people don't agree with the things that you agree with. We are always happy to hear from you. You can leave us a direct message on our Instagram, Jen _ at
Jen _ and Dave. _
Yes. We'll leave it at
We
that.
know.
I know.
We're old people. We don't know how the internet works.
What is our handle?
It's like the CB radio days.
Exactly. But we appreciate you listening, and please leave us a comment or question, and we will talk to you next time.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.